The stars bent and twisted as space itself tore open like a wound in the dark. From the rip in reality came ships, massive, sleek vessels that moved with purpose through the void. They emerged one by one, their hulls gleaming with strange lights that seemed to pulse like heartbeats. Admiral Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the flagship Retribution, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched his homeworld appear on the main screen. 3,000 years had passed since humans last saw Earth. 3,000 years of wandering the cold depths of space, searching for a new home that never came. Now they were back. "Sir, all ships have arrived safely," Captain Sora reported, from her station. Her voice was calm, but Tae-ho could hear the emotion underneath. Every human in the fleet felt the same way. They were home at last. Tae-ho nodded without taking his eyes off Earth. The planet looked wrong. Where blue oceans and green continents should have been, he saw geometric patterns carved into the surface. Massive metal rings circled the world, like chains. Strange towers reached up from the surface into space itself. "What have they done to our world?" Sora whispered. The aliens had taken Earth after the humans left. They called themselves the Dominion, and they ruled most of the galaxy now. For 3,000 years they had used Earth as their central command post. They had changed everything. "Sir, we're getting signals from the planet," called out Lieutenant Minsu from the communications station. "Multiple alien species are present. I count at least 40 different types of ships in orbit." Tae-ho finally turned from the screen. His face was weathered from years of space travel, but his eyes were sharp and determined. "How many ships do they have?" "Over 3,000 in the immediate area, sir. More are coming from other parts of the system." The bridge fell silent. The human fleet had only 200 ships. On paper, they were badly outnumbered. "Sir," Sora said quietly, "perhaps we should withdraw and plan a better approach." Tae-ho smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "No, Captain. We've been planning for 3,000 years. It's time to come home." On Earth's surface, in what had once been the city of Seoul, a different kind of human watched the skies. Ji-woo, crouched in the ruins of an old building, her scanner held tight in her hands. The device showed her what the aliens in orbit could see: human ships appearing at the edge of the solar system. Ji-woo was part of the underground. When most humans had fled Earth long ago, some had stayed behind. They hid in the deep places, in forgotten tunnels and abandoned cities. For 3,000 years they had waited and watched and planned. "They're really back," she said into her communicator. Around the planet, other hidden humans heard her words and felt their hearts race with hope. The aliens had never found all of them. The Dominion thought they had wiped out the remaining humans centuries ago, but they were wrong. The underground had survived, learned, and grown strong in secret. Back in orbit, the Dominion fleet was responding to the human arrival. Commander Velcris of the hegemony species stood in his command center, looking at the reports with amusement. "Humans?" he said to his aide. "I thought we dealt with that problem long ago." Velcris was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. His species had been one of the first to join the Dominion. They considered themselves superior to most other life forms, especially the primitive humans. "Sir, there are 200 ships," his aide reported. "They appear to be refugees returning to their home system." 200? Velcris laughed. "Send the local defense fleet. This will be over in minutes." The aide hesitated. "Sir, should we try to communicate with them first? Perhaps offer terms of surrender?" Velcris waved a dismissive hand. "What could primitive humans possibly say that would interest us? Destroy them all." On the Retribution, Tae-ho watched as the alien fleet began to move toward them. He could see the confidence in their formation. They expected an easy victory. "Sir, incoming transmission from the lead alien ship," Minsu announced. "Put it through." The screen flickered and Velcris appeared. His alien features looked down on the human bridge with obvious contempt. "Human vessel, you are trespassing in Dominion space. Surrender immediately, and we may allow some of you to live as slaves." Tae-ho stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. "I am Admiral Tae-ho of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. You are occupying our world. You have 72 hours to leave Earth and all human territories. This is your only warning." Velcris stared for a moment, then burst into laughter. Your world. Humans were driven from this system 3,000 years ago. You are nothing but refugees and outcasts. We rule here now. 72 hours. Tejo repeated calmly. You threaten us with 200 ships against our thousands? Velcris sneered. You must be insane. Time will tell, Tejo said, and cut the transmission. The alien commander's laughter echoed through his ship. He turned to his aide. Signal all ships. We attack immediately. Let's show these primitive humans what real power looks like. The Dominion fleet began to spread out, preparing for battle. 3,000 ships moved into attack formation, their weapons charging and shields activating. They had fought many battles and won them all. This would be no different. On Earth, Jiwoo felt the ground vibrate beneath her feet. Deep under the planet's surface, ancient machines were waking up. The human underground had spent 3,000 years preparing for this moment. They had built things the aliens never suspected existed. All units prepare for activation, she whispered into her communicator. Around the world, humans emerged from their hiding places and moved to their positions. Back on the Retribution, Sora looked worried as she watched the alien fleet approach. Sir, they outnumber us 15-1. Tejo nodded. I know. Should we call for reinforcements? Not yet. Minsu turned from his station. Sir, the alien fleet will be in weapons range in 10 minutes. Tejo walked to the center of the bridge and sat in his command chair. Send a message to all ships. Tell them it's time to show the galaxy what humanity has become. Sora activated the fleet communications. All ships, this is the Retribution. Operation Homecoming is now active. You may begin when ready. Around the human fleet, space itself seemed to shimmer. The ships didn't move in any normal way. Instead, they seemed to slide through reality as if the laws of physics were just suggestions. Velcris watched from his flagship as the human ships began to change position. Something was wrong. The humans were moving too fast, too smoothly. Their ships seemed to bend light around themselves. What kind of propulsion is that? His aide asked nervously. I don't know, Velcris admitted. For the first time, he felt a small doubt creep into his mind. The human ships spread out into a formation that made no tactical sense. They should have grouped together for defense, but instead they scattered across space in a seemingly random pattern. Sir, the alien communications officer called out. We're detecting strange energy readings from the human fleet. What kind of energy? I don't know, sir. The sensors can't identify it. Velcris frowned. In 3,000 years of Dominion rule, they had cataloged every known form of technology in the galaxy. Nothing should be unknown to them. On the Retribution, Tejo watched calmly as the alien fleet moved closer. Minsu, are you ready? The young lieutenant's hands moved over his controls. Yes, sir. All ships report ready for phase shift. Then let's remind the galaxy why they should fear humanity. The space around the human fleet began to ripple like water. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist as forces beyond normal understanding came into play. The humans had not spent 3,000 years just wandering through space. They had learned things, discovered things, become things that the aliens could not imagine. Velcris stared at his screens as impossible readings flooded in. The human ships were doing something that violated every known law of physics. Space and time itself seemed to be obeying their will. Sir, what are your orders? His aide asked, fear creeping into his voice. Velcris opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. For the first time in his long military career, he had no idea what he was facing. The human fleet hung in space like predators waiting to strike. And in that moment, Velcris realized that everything the Dominion thought they knew about humans was wrong. Very, very wrong. The Dominion fleet moved forward like a massive wall of metal and death. 3,000 ships spread across space, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Commander Velcris stood on his bridge, watching the tiny human fleet grow larger on his screens. All ships prepare to fire, he commanded. We'll show these primitive humans what happens when they challenge the Dominion. But something was wrong. The human ships were not running away as expected. Instead, they hung in space, waiting. Velcris could see them clearly now, sleek vessels that seemed to shimmer and bend light around their hulls. "Sir," his weapons officer called out, "the humans are broadcasting some kind of signal. It's not communication, it's something else." "What do you mean, something else?" "I don't know, sir. The computers can't identify it." On the human flagship Retribution, Lieutenant Minsu worked at his control panel. His hands moved across displays that showed patterns and symbols no alien had ever seen. The technology was beyond anything in the Dominion's experience. "Admiral, all ships are synchronized," Minsu reported. "Reality anchors are in position." "Admiral," Tejo nodded. "Begin Phase 1. The space around the human fleet began to change. At first it was subtle, just a slight shimmer in the starlight. But then the effect grew stronger. Space itself seemed to bend and twist around the human ships. Velcris watched in growing alarm as his sensors went crazy. "What's happening? What are they doing?" His science officer, a creature with multiple eyes and tentacles, worked frantically at his station. "Sir, they're manipulating space-time itself. This should be impossible." "Nothing is impossible," Velcris snapped. "Find out how they're doing it and stop them." But even as he spoke, the first human ship simply vanished. Not destroyed, not hidden behind a cloaking field. It ceased to exist in normal space. Then another disappeared, and another. "Where did they go?" Velcris demanded. Before anyone could answer, the missing human ships reappeared, but now they were scattered throughout the Dominion formation, appearing suddenly in the middle of alien squadrons. "How did they get there?" the weapons officer shouted. "They were in front of us a second ago." The truth was beyond the aliens' understanding. The humans had learned to fold space itself, to step outside normal reality and reappear wherever they chose. Distance meant nothing to them anymore. Admiral Tejo smiled as he watched the chaos on the alien ships. "Captain Sora, you may begin the demonstration." Sora nodded and activated the fleet communication system. "All ships weapons free. Show them what we've learned." The human ships opened fire, but not with lasers or missiles or any weapon the aliens recognized. Instead, they fired reality itself. Beams of twisted space-time lanced out from the human vessels, and wherever they touched, the laws of physics simply stopped working. An alien battleship found itself suddenly occupying the same space as its own escort. The two ships didn't collide or explode. They merged into a single impossible object that shouldn't exist. The crew screamed as their bodies became part of the ship's hull, alive but transformed into living metal. Another group of Dominion vessels discovered that gravity no longer affected them. They began falling upward, accelerating away from the battle at increasing speed. Their engines couldn't stop them. Nothing could stop them. They would fall through space forever. A squadron of alien fighters found that time had stopped working properly around them. From their perspective, everything else in the universe had frozen. They could see laser beams hanging motionless in space, explosions caught mid-blast like sculptures of fire and light. Velcris stared at his screens in horror. In just minutes, half his fleet was gone. Not destroyed, changed, transformed, made impossible. His weapons couldn't lock onto the human ships, which seemed to exist in several different locations at once. "Sir, we have to retreat," his aide begged. "This isn't a battle, it's something else entirely." But Velcris was a proud warrior. He had never retreated in his life. "All ships, focus fire on the human flagship. If we destroy their leader, maybe the others will surrender." 1,000 alien weapons turned toward the Retribution. Energy beams and plasma bolts filled space, all aimed at the human flagship. The barrage was powerful enough to destroy a small moon. The weapon struck the human ship directly. For a moment, brilliant light filled the screens. When it faded, the aliens expected to see debris and wreckage. Instead, the Retribution hung in space completely undamaged. Not just undamaged, it looked exactly the same as before the attack, as if nothing had happened at all. "Impossible," Velcris whispered. On the human bridge, Tejo calmly sipped a cup of tea. The alien weapons had never touched his ship. When the beams reached the Retribution, they had simply been convinced that the ship wasn't there. Reality had been politely asked to redirect the attack elsewhere, and Reality had agreed. "Sir," Minsu reported, "the aliens are trying to retreat." Teho looked up from his tea. "Let some of them go. We want word of this to spread." But most of the alien fleet couldn't retreat even if they wanted to. The human ships had surrounded them, not in normal space, but in folded reality. Every direction the aliens tried to flee led them back to the center of the battle. Captain Sora watched as alien crews abandoned their ships in escape pods. The pods launched into space, but instead of flying away from the battle, they found themselves flying in perfect circles around the human fleet. The crews were trapped in loops of curved spacetime. "Admiral," Sora said, "perhaps we should end this quickly. It seems almost cruel to continue." Teho nodded. "You're right. Minsu, initiate final phase." Minsu's hands moved across his controls one last time. Around the remaining alien ships, space itself began to unravel. Not violently, gently, like a piece of cloth coming apart thread by thread. The alien vessels simply faded away. They didn't explode or burn. They just became less and less real until they were nothing more than memories that might have been dreams. In 17 minutes, the entire Dominion fleet was gone. 3,000 ships, reduced to empty space and confused thoughts. Only a few alien vessels escaped, those at the very edge of the battle. Velcris was among them, his ship badly damaged and his crew in shock. He stared at the empty space where his fleet had been and tried to understand what had happened. "Sir," his communications officer said weakly. "Message from the human flagship." Admiral Teho appeared on the alien screen. He looked calm and relaxed, as if he had just finished a pleasant conversation rather than an impossible battle. "Commander Velcris," Teho said politely, "I trust you now understand the situation. Please inform your superiors that humanity has returned. We would be happy to discuss terms, but only if they approach us with proper respect." Velcris tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. Finally, he managed. What are you? You're not the humans we remember." Teho smiled, and for the first time, there was something terrifying in that expression. "We are exactly what we've always been, Commander. We are humanity. The difference is that exile taught us things your people never imagined possible." The transmission ended, leaving Velcris staring at an empty screen. Around him, his crew worked frantically to repair their damaged ship and prepare for the jump back to Earth. On the planet's surface, Jiwoo watched the sky through the ruins of ancient Seoul. She had monitored the entire battle through her hidden sensors. The returning humans had won just as the underground had always believed they would. "All units," she whispered into her communicator. "Phase 1 complete. Begin preparation for surface operations." Around the world, hidden humans emerged from their shelters and hiding places. For 3,000 years, they had waited for this moment. Now their cousins from the stars had returned, and together they would reclaim their world. But first, the aliens on Earth's surface needed to be dealt with. And Jiwoo suspected that would be an interesting conversation. Back on the Retribution, Admiral Teho stood before the main screen, looking down at his home planet. Sora approached him cautiously. "Sir, the demonstration was successful. Should we begin landing operations?" Teho shook his head. "Not yet, Captain. First, we need to have a proper discussion with the Dominion leadership. They need to understand exactly what they're dealing with. And if they refuse to listen?" Teho's smile returned cold and patient. "Then we'll have to be more persuasive." The Great Hall of the Dominion Council had never seen such panic. Representatives from 40 different alien species filled the chamber, all talking at once in their various languages. Fear filled the air like a thick cloud. At the center of the chaos sat Council Speaker Zethran of the Apex species. He was ancient even by his people's standards, and had ruled the Dominion for over 1,000 years. Nothing in all that time had prepared him for this moment. "Silence!" Zethran's voice boomed through the hall. The arguing stopped, and 40 pairs of alien eyes turned to him. "Commander Velcris, report." Velcris stood on shaking legs, his uniform, was torn and his gray skin looked pale. "Honorable Speaker, the humans, they're not what we expected." "Explain." "They destroyed our entire fleet in 17 minutes. 3,000 ships gone. Not destroyed. Made to disappear. They used weapons that don't exist. Technology that shouldn't work." Zethran's 4 eyes narrowed. "You're telling me that 200 primitive human ships defeated our forces?" "They're not primitive," Velcris said quietly. "They've become something else. Something beyond our understanding." The council chamber erupted in angry voices again. Representatives shouted questions and accusations. Some demanded immediate revenge, while others suggested retreat. The unity that had held the Dominion together for millennia was cracking. High above Earth, aboard the Retribution, Admiral Tejo prepared for the next phase. Captain Sora approached him with reports from the surface. "Sir, we've made contact with the underground resistance. Ji-Woo and her people are ready to begin operations." Tejo nodded. "Good. And the aliens on the surface?" "Still in shock. They're trying to contact their leadership, but most are too confused to organize any response." "Excellent. Minsu, prepare for diplomatic contact." Lieutenant Minsu looked up from his station. "Sir, the Dominion Council is refusing all communications. They won't talk to us." "Then we'll have to visit them in person," Tejo said with a slight smile. "Prepare Ambassador Heejin for transport." On Earth's surface, in the ruins of what had once been Seoul, Ji-Woo gathered her team. They were all descendants of humans who had stayed behind when the great ships left 3,000 years ago. They looked human, but they were different too. Generations of hiding and surviving had made them harder, smarter, more careful. "The time has come," Ji-Woo told her team. "Our cousins from space have won the battle up there. Now we do our part down here." Her second-in-command, a young man named Dong-Su, checked his equipment. "What about the alien garrisons?" "Leave them alone for now. They're scared and confused. Let them stay that way while we prepare the real surprise." Ji-Woo led her team through hidden tunnels that ran beneath the city. The aliens thought they knew everything about Earth, but they had never found these passages. The human underground had spent 3,000 years digging, building, and preparing. They reached a massive chamber deep under the Earth. Ancient machines filled the space, humming with quiet power. These devices looked nothing like human technology from 3,000 years ago. They were something new, something the underground had built while waiting for this day. "Begin activation." "Sequence," Ji-Woo ordered. Her team moved to different control stations around the chamber. As they worked, the machines began to glow with soft light. Deep beneath Earth's surface, a network of incredible devices was coming online. Back in the Dominion Council chamber, Speaker Zethran was trying to maintain order. The representatives were demanding action, but no one could agree on what to do. "We must strike back immediately," declared General Moxtar of the Titan species. "No species can be allowed to challenge the Dominion." "With what?" asked Science Minister Velrath of the Hegemony. "Our best fleet was destroyed in minutes. We don't even understand how they did it." "Then we use the Grand Fleet," Moxtar insisted. 50,000 ships from all our worlds. They cannot defeat such numbers." Zethran considered this. The Grand Fleet was the Dominion's ultimate weapon, never used because no enemy had ever required such overwhelming force. Perhaps it was time. Before he could speak, the air in the chamber began to shimmer. The aliens looked around in confusion, as reality seemed to bend and twist near the center of the room. Then Ambassador Heejin appeared. She materialized out of nothing, standing calmly in the middle of the council chamber, as if she had always been there. The alien representatives jumped back in shock and fear. Heejin was a middle-aged human woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. She wore simple clothes and carried no weapons, but her presence filled the great hall with an energy that made the aliens' skin crawl. "Greetings," she said in perfect galactic standard. "I am Ambassador Heejin of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. I come with an offer of peace." Zethran recovered from his shock faster than the others. "How did you get in here?" "This station is heavily guarded. Your guards are unharmed," Heejin assured him. "I simply asked reality to let me visit you, and it agreed." The speaker's 4 eyes studied the human woman. "What do you want?" Very little, actually. We want you to leave Earth and return it to human control. We want recognition that this system belongs to humanity, and we want acknowledgement that the age of Dominion rule is ending. The council chamber exploded in angry shouts. Representatives jumped to their feet, waving their arms and tentacles in rage. But Hyejin stood quietly in the center of the storm, unmoved by their fury. Impossible, Zethran roared. The Dominion has ruled for 3,000 years. We will not surrender to a handful of primitive refugees. Primitive? Hyejin asked with mild curiosity. Is that what you think we are? I know what you are, the speaker said coldly. You're the descendants of the humans we drove from this system long ago. You may have learned a few new tricks, but you're still the same weak species that fled. Before our power, Hyejin nodded thoughtfully. I see. Perhaps a demonstration would help clarify the situation. She raised one hand and the great hall began to change. The walls became transparent, showing the space outside. The aliens could see their orbital stations, their defense platforms, their mighty fleets. Watch carefully, Hyejin said softly. One by one, the Dominion's defensive structures began to transform. Not destroyed, but changed. A weapons platform became a garden of flowering vines that somehow survived in the vacuum of space. A battle station turned into a school of glowing fish that swam through the void. The aliens stared in horror as their most powerful defenses became impossible things that obeyed no natural laws. Their weapons couldn't fight gardens and fish. Their tactics meant nothing against enemies who could rewrite reality itself. Stop this, Zethran commanded. Of course. Hyejin lowered her hand, and everything returned to normal. The weapons and stations were exactly as they had been before, as if nothing had happened. But the message was clear. How? Whispered Science. Minister Velrath. 3,000 years of exile taught us many things, Hyejin explained. We learned that reality is much more flexible than most species believe. We learned to ask politely instead of demanding rudely. And we learned that the universe tends to listen to those who truly understand it. General Moxitar stepped forward, his warrior instincts taking over. You think your tricks frighten us? We have 50,000 ships in the Grand Fleet. Let's see how your reality bending works against such numbers. Hyejin looked sad. You still don't understand. Numbers don't matter when you're fighting an enemy who can make numbers meaningless. Then let's find out, Zethran said coldly. I reject your terms. The Dominion will never surrender to humans. That's unfortunate, Hyejin replied, but not unexpected. Very well, we'll do this the hard way. She began to fade away like morning mist. You have 12 hours to reconsider. After that, we'll demonstrate why challenging humanity is a very poor decision. The ambassador vanished completely, leaving behind only the faint scent of flowers and the memory of her gentle smile. The council chamber fell silent. Finally, Velrath spoke. Speaker, perhaps we should consider their offer. Never, Zethran said firmly. Signal the Grand Fleet. Every ship, every species, every weapon we have. If these humans want war, we'll give them war. Deep beneath Earth's surface, Jiwoo smiled as her sensors detected the mobilization of the alien fleet. They're calling up everything they have. 50,000 ships. Should we be worried? Asked Dongsu. No, Jiwoo replied, watching her ancient machines come fully online. We should be ready. The real battle is about to begin. High above, Admiral Taeho received word of the Dominion's response. He stood before the main screen looking down at Earth with thoughtful eyes. Captain Sora signaled the reserve fleet. It's time for Admiral Wu Jin to join us. Sora looked confused. Reserve fleet, sir? Taeho smiled. Did you really think we brought only 200 ships to reclaim our homeworld? Contact the deep space stations. Tell them to open the gates. As Sora worked at her station, space itself began to ripple far beyond the edge of the solar system. Something vast was coming through the dark between stars. The real human armada was about to arrive. The grand fleet of the Dominion was a sight that had never failed to inspire terror across the galaxy. 50,000 ships from 40 different species, each vessel representing the finest military technology their civilization could produce. They came in waves, emerging from quantum jumps in perfect formation. Supreme Battle Commander Morgoth of the Titan species stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion. He was twice the height of a human with armored skin and 4 powerful arms. In 1,000 years of military service, he had never lost a battle. "All fleets report ready, Commander," his aide announced. Around them, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. Every one of them was a veteran of countless campaigns. Morgoth studied the tactical displays. Earth hung before them, looking peaceful and quiet. Only 200 human ships orbited the planet. The numbers were so absurd it seemed like a joke. "Where is their main fleet?" he wondered aloud. "Sir, our scouts report no other human ships in the system," replied his intelligence officer. "These appear to be all they have." Impossible. No species would challenge the Dominion with so few ships. Morgoth frowned. "Are we certain about the reports from the first battle? Commander Velcris's account has been verified by multiple sources. The humans do possess some form of advanced technology." Morgoth nodded grimly. "Then we proceed with caution. All ships to battle stations. We advance in defensive formation." The Grand Fleet began to move toward Earth like a slow tide of metal and death. Each ship was a fortress, armed with weapons that could crack moons and shields that could withstand the heat of stars. On the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Tejo watched the approaching armada with calm interest. Captain Sora stood beside him, checking reports from across the human fleet. "Sir, they're maintaining defensive formation. They've learned to be careful around us." "Good," Tejo replied. "Fear makes enemies more predictable." "Minsu, any word from the Deep Fleet?" Lieutenant Minsu worked at his station monitoring communications across impossible distances. "Admiral Wu Jin reports the reserve fleet is in position. 2 million ships ready for phase transition." Sora nearly dropped her tablet. 2 million? Sir, I thought we only had a few hundred vessels." Tejo smiled. "The Dominion made a common mistake, Captain. They assumed the ships they could see were all we had. They never considered that we might have learned to hide entire fleets in the spaces between reality." Deep beneath Earth's surface, Ji-Woo monitored the approaching alien armada through her underground sensors. The ancient machines around her hummed with increasing power as they prepared to wake from their long sleep. "Dongsu, initiate the planetary defense grid," she ordered. "It's time to show the surface dwellers what we've been building down here." Her second-in-command activated a series of controls that hadn't been touched in centuries. All across Earth, hidden installations began to power up. The aliens had ruled the planet's surface for 3,000 years, never suspecting what lay beneath their feet. The Grand Fleet reached the edge of Earth's defensive sphere and paused. Morgoth studied his sensors, looking for traps or hidden weapons. Everything appeared normal. "Begin the advance," he commanded. "All ships, maintain formation and prepare for enemy tricks." The massive armada moved forward again, weapons charging, and shields at maximum power. They expected the humans to run or hide or try some desperate last gambit. Instead, the human fleet simply waited. "Sir," Morgoth's tactical officer called out, "we're detecting strange energy readings from the planet's surface." "What kind of energy?" "Unknown, sir. It's coming from deep underground, all across the planet." Before Morgoth could respond, space around the Grand Fleet began to change. It started as a slight distortion, like heat waves rising from hot ground. But the effect quickly grew stronger. "Sir, space-time is destabilizing around us," the science officer reported in a panicked voice. "The readings are off all our scales." "How is that possible? We're nowhere near the human ships." The answer came from deep beneath Earth's surface. The machines that Ji-Woo's people had built over 3,000 years were not weapons in any traditional sense. They were reality engines, devices that could reach out and reshape the fundamental structure of space and time itself. Phase 1. "Activation complete," Ji-Woo announced. "The aliens are now within our field of influence." Around the Grand Fleet, the basic laws of physics began to break down. Some ships found themselves floating upside down relative to their neighbors, with their artificial gravity pointing in impossible directions. Others discovered that their engines were pushing them backwards no matter which way they pointed. "What's happening?" Morgoth demanded. His crew struggled to make sense of their instruments. "Sir, our ships are reporting that up and down, forward, and backward have become flexible." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer we have, sir." Admiral Tejo chose that moment to make his next move. All ships begin phase transition. Around Earth's orbit, the human fleet simply vanished. Not destroyed, not hidden behind cloaking fields. They stepped out of normal space entirely. The Grand Fleet's sensors registered nothing but empty vacuum where the enemy had been. "Where did they go?" Morgoth shouted. The answer came seconds later when the human ships reappeared, but now they were scattered throughout the Grand Fleet's formation. 200 human vessels materialized in the middle of 50,000 alien ships, appearing instantly wherever they chose to be. "Impossible," Morgoth whispered. "How did they move through our fleet without being detected?" The truth was beyond his understanding. The humans hadn't moved through his fleet. They had convinced reality that they had always been there. Space and time had politely rearranged themselves to accommodate human desires. Admiral Wu Jin chose that moment to spring his trap. In the dark spaces between stars, quantum gates opened like flowers blooming in the void. The hidden human armada poured through, not 200 ships but 2 million. They appeared everywhere at once, filling the space around Earth with vessels that seemed to be made of living light. Each ship was different, as if they had been grown rather than built. They moved like schools of fish through an ocean of stars. Morgoth stared at his displays in complete shock. 2 million ships? Where did they come from? But there was no time to find answers. The human fleet began its attack, and it was unlike anything in the Dominion's experience. They didn't fire weapons, they fired possibilities. One group of alien vessels found themselves existing in several different times at once. Their crews aged and grew young in endless loops while their ships crumbled and rebuilt themselves in cycles that had no beginning or end. Another squadron discovered that the space around them had forgotten how to support matter. Their ships began to sink through reality like stones through water, falling into dimensions that had no names. A wing of Dominion fighters tried to retreat, only to find that they had become two-dimensional drawings on the surface of space. They could see in all directions but could only move forward and backward, trapped forever in a flat universe. "Sir, we have to retreat," Morgoth's aide pleaded. "This isn't war, it's madness." But retreat was impossible. The humans had surrounded the Grand Fleet not in normal space but in folded reality. Every direction led back to the center of the battle. The aliens were trapped in a maze made of twisted space-time. On Earth's surface, Jiwoo watched through her sensors as the impossible battle raged above. Her underground installations were working perfectly, helping the human fleet by making local reality more flexible and responsive. "The surface garrisons are trying to contact their ships," Dongsu reported. "Let them," Jiwoo replied. "There's nothing they can do to help." Admiral Tejo stood calmly on his bridge as the battle reached its climax. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, manipulating forces that had no names in any alien language. "Sir, the enemy fleet is in full panic," Sora reported. "Their formation has completely collapsed." "Then it's time to end this," Tejo decided. "Minsu, initiate final phase." The young lieutenant's hands moved across his controls one last time. Throughout the human fleet, weapons unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen came online. They didn't fire energy or matter. They fired the concept of existence itself. Where the human weapons struck, alien ships didn't explode or break apart. They simply stopped being real, not destroyed. They became ideas that someone might have had about ships, possibilities that never quite became actual. The crew members didn't die. They transitioned into states of being that had no translation in any physical language. They became mathematical concepts, beautiful equations that described what they might have been if they had continued to exist. In 17 minutes, the entire Grand Fleet was gone. 50,000 ships from 40 species, reduced to elegant mathematical descriptions floating in the quantum foam. Only a few vessels escaped, those at the very edge of the battle who managed to jump away before reality finished reshaping itself around them. Morgeth was among the survivors, his flagship badly damaged and his crew in shock. He stared at the empty space where his mighty fleet had been and tried to understand what had just happened. A communication came through from the human flagship. Admiral Tejo appeared on the screen, looking as calm as if he had just finished a quiet conversation. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Dominion, rulers of space for 3,000 years, had been defeated, not by armies or superior technology, but by beings who had learned to reshape reality itself. On 1,000 worlds, alien species gathered around communication screens and tried to understand what had happened. The humans were back, and they were no longer the weak creatures who had fled Earth long ago. In the ruins of the Dominion Council, the surviving representatives met in emergency session. Their great hall was half empty now. Many species had already withdrawn their ambassadors and begun preparing for a new age. Council Speaker Zethron sat alone at the center of the chamber. His 4 eyes were dim with exhaustion and defeat. In all his centuries of rule, he had never imagined this moment could come. "The reports are confirmed," announced Science Minister Velrath. "Both fleets destroyed. Millions of our people changed. We don't even have words for what happened to them." "What do the humans want?" asked a representative from the outer colonies. Velrath consulted his notes. The same terms they offered before. Complete withdrawal from Earth and the Sol system, recognition of human sovereignty over their ancestral territories, and acknowledgement that their time of exile is over. "And if we refuse again?" The chamber fell silent. Everyone remembered what happened to those who defied humanity's polite requests. On Earth's surface, Jiwoo emerged from her underground hideout for the first time in years. Above her, the sky was clear of alien ships. The Dominion forces that had occupied her world for 3 millennia were fleeing in panic. She walked through the ruins of ancient Seoul, remembering stories her grandmother had told about the time before the aliens came. Soon those stories would be reality again. Her communicator buzzed. "Jiwoo, this is Admiral Tejo. We're ready to begin surface operations." "We're ready too, Admiral. The underground has mapped every alien installation on the planet. We can guide your people to all of them." "Excellent. But first, we have visitors coming." Admiral Tejo stood in the transport bay of his flagship, waiting for his guest to arrive. The approaching ship was ancient even by Dominion standards, its hull scarred by eons of travel through deep space. The vessel docked, and a figure emerged that made even the experienced human crew step back in surprise. It was tall and thin, almost skeletal, wrapped in robes that seemed to be made of starlight itself. When it moved, reality rippled around it like water. "I am Korthul," the being said, in a voice that echoed from multiple dimensions at once. "I speak for the ancients." Tejo bowed respectfully. The ancients were legend even among the legends of the galaxy. They had ruled the stars before the Dominion, before any current species had learned to leave their home planets. Then they had vanished, leaving behind only ruins and mysteries. "Ancient One, we are honored by your presence." "The honor is ours, Admiral. We have watched your return with great interest." They walked together through the corridors of the Retribution, past crew members who stared in awe at their mysterious guest. Finally, they reached Tejo's private office, where they could speak freely. "Tell me," Korthul said, "do you know who we really are?" Tejo considered the question carefully. "You are the ancients, the first great civilization. You ruled the galaxy millions of years ago, then disappeared when your time ended." Korthul made a sound that might have been laughter. "Close, Admiral, but not quite correct." The ancient raised one skeletal hand, and the air around them shimmered. Images began to form, pictures of the deep past that showed impossible truths. "We did not disappear," Korthul explained. "We transcended. And we are not from the distant past, Admiral. We are from the distant future." The images showed human colony ships, not from 3,000 years ago, but from 3 million years in the future. Ships that had traveled so far into the cosmic deep that they had passed beyond time itself, becoming beings of pure thought and energy. "You are us?" Teho whispered. "We are what humanity becomes, given enough time and wisdom. We are your descendants, Admiral, evolved beyond physical form. We have watched over the galaxy for eons, waiting for this moment." The truth was staggering. The mysterious ancients that every species feared and worshipped were humanity's own children, grown beyond recognition across vast stretches of time. The Dominion never knew. Korthul continued. They spent millennia trying to understand our ruins and decipher our messages, never realizing they were studying the works of the very species they had driven from Earth. Teho felt a deep satisfaction at the cosmic irony. What happens now? Now, Admiral, the galaxy learns a new way of being. The Dominion ruled through force and fear. We offer something different: growth, transcendence, the chance for every species to reach their full potential. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Ambassador He-Jin materialized once again in the Dominion Council chamber. The alien representatives cringed away from her, remembering what had happened to their fleets. "Have you reconsidered our offer?" she asked. Politely, Speaker Zethron looked up at her with defeated eyes. "We accept your terms. Earth is yours. We will withdraw our forces immediately." "Thank you," He-Jin said with genuine warmth. "That's very wise of you." "But what happens to us?" asked Velrath. "What happens to the Dominion?" He-Jin smiled. "You have a choice. You can continue as you were, ruling through fear and force, and watch your civilization slowly decline into irrelevance, or you can join us in something better." "What do you mean?" "We offer guidance, Minister, help in evolving beyond your current limitations, the same path we took during our exile, but with teachers to show you the way." She gestured, and the air filled with images of possibilities. Alien species working alongside humans, not as servants or masters, but as partners in exploration and growth. Cities that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Ships that sailed between stars like boats on a calm sea. "This is what we offer," Hyojin said. "Not conquest, but cooperation. Not domination, but elevation." Most of the alien representatives stared in wonder at the visions she showed them. A few, like Zethron, looked skeptical and afraid. "And if we refuse this guidance?" the old speaker asked. "Then you refuse it," Hyojin replied simply. "We won't force wisdom on anyone, but we also won't allow you to prevent others from accepting it." Over the following weeks, the transformation began. Most Dominion species chose to join the new order, eager to learn from humanity's impossible knowledge. Their ships began arriving at Earth, not as conquerors but as students. Jiwoo stood in the rebuilt city of Seoul, watching alien and human children play together in parks that existed in several dimensions at once. The underground installations that had hidden beneath Earth for so long were now schools, teaching the fundamental secrets of reality to anyone willing to learn. Admiral Teho walked through the restored landscape, marveling at how quickly the planet was healing. Using their reality-shaping abilities, the humans had undone 3,000 years of damage in just a few months. Oceans ran clean, forests grew where deserts had been, and the geometric scars left by alien mining operations had become gardens of impossible beauty. Captain Sora found him by the shore of a lake that hadn't existed the day before. "Sir, we're receiving reports from across the galaxy. 17 species have officially requested human guidance. 23 others are sending diplomatic missions. And the rest? Hiding, mostly. A few are trying to organize resistance movements, but they're not getting much support." Teho nodded. "Let them hide if they want to. Fear is a poor foundation for building anything lasting." Lieutenant Minsu approached with another report. "Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting something interesting. More human ships are arriving from deep space. Colonies we lost contact with millennia ago." "How many?" "Thousands, sir. Maybe tens of thousands. It seems our exile scattered us farther than we ever imagined." Teho smiled. Then our family reunion is just beginning. He looked up at the stars, no longer distant points of light, but accessible destinations in humanity's expanding domain. The age of exile was over. The age of return had begun. But this wasn't the end of humanity's journey. It was just the next step. Somewhere in the deep future, their descendants would evolve into beings of pure thought and energy, becoming the ancients who would guide the next cycle of galactic civilization. "What now, sir?" Sora asked. Tejo turned from the lake, his expression calm and determined. "Now we do what humans have always done best, Captain. We explore. We grow. We help others do the same. And we make sure that never again will our children have to wander homeless among the stars." Above them, human and alien ships worked together to build something unprecedented, a civilization based not on conquest or control, but on the simple idea that every species deserved the chance to become more than they ever imagined possible. The galaxy had spent 3,000 years without humanity. It would spend the next million years learning what it meant to have them back.